can I give my children their inheritance before I die? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. And today let's look at a quick question that I often get, and that is, do I have to wait until after I'm gone to give my inheritance to my children, or can I give some, if not all of it, to them while I'm still alive? So this is a pretty common question I get when I'm working with couples with children, especially ones that have adult children who are ready to inherit and are able to inherit their estate and maybe could use the money right now. Especially if you have, let's say, 3 children and one child could use some extra money right now, even if the other 2 are doing just fine. It can often pull at your heartstrings that why do I have to wait to give that inheritance to that child until after I'm gone? They could really use the money now. And by giving it to them now, you can see the good it would do. You can see the change it would make in their life. Maybe you're leaving money for education for your grandkids, and you have other things that you would love to see them spend the money on, but you don't want to wait until after you're gone for that child to be able to inherit that money. So in that case, we can do what's called an early inheritance. And using an early inheritance means that you can take part or all of your estate plan funds and distribute them to whoever you like to distribute them to. So in the case of children, as I said, you may have one child who could use the money now, and then have other children who can inherit later, and you're not as worried about them financially. There's no rule that if you give an early inheritance to one of your children or to one family member, that you have to give it to all of them. So if you're considering an early inheritance, let's look at 3 reasons why you can do an early inheritance and 3 reasons why it probably doesn't make sense to do an early inheritance. And then after that, you can talk to the professionals in your life and find out what makes the most sense for you, your family, and your legacy. So there's 3 pros of giving an inheritance to your family early. The first one is that immediate impact. So you're giving them the money now, or you're giving them the asset now. Maybe you're giving them a car that they could really use, or maybe it's a car to your grandkid who could really use it to get to and from school. So by giving your children an early inheritance, you are able to see the immediate impact that that would give. You can see them using the money or using the car or whatever it is you've given them. You can see that, so you don't have to wait until after you're gone. The second reason we can do an early inheritance is for tax benefits. So if you're worried about a probate court looking at your assets and determining that you would be qualified for the estate tax, whether at your state level or whether at the federal level, or if you're in a state where there's an inheritance tax, whether you're worried about your family members being taxed on their inheritance, by giving them an early inheritance while you're still alive, those assets aren't counted towards your probate or your estate tax levels. So in that case, you'd be able to reduce the amount of money left in your estate, and you may be able to avoid the estate or the inheritance tax. Third reason why we may want to consider an early inheritance is to avoid probate altogether. So if we reduce the amount of money in your name at the time of your death, there may or may not even be a reason for a probate case to be opened. If you're in a state like Minnesota, where we have a certain level set out by our probate court, if you have under $75,000 in your name and you don't own any real estate in your name, you can qualify for a small estate where they don't have to open a probate case. They can use an affidavit of small collections to essentially gather up whatever assets are left. If they're under $75,000, and they can distribute it to the people in your estate plan. So if this is the case, we can see there's 3 good reasons why that early inheritance may make sense. And the third one is one that a lot of people are concerned about, and that is avoiding the probate court. And of course, if your assets are of a significant nature, you can also then go back to number 2, where we're looking at the tax benefits of avoiding an estate or an inheritance tax. But while it may make a lot of sense to give an early inheritance, there can be 3 reasons why an early inheritance may not actually make sense for you and your family. First one is there is a financial risk. So let's say you give a good portion of money to your children, and let's say you give more than you were intending to, or you give most of the estate to your children. What if you run out of money? You can't go back to your children and ask for them to give their inheritance back. I mean, you can, but if they've used the money already to buy a house, to spend on education, they might not have the ability to pay it back, and you may have dampened your financial prospects for your later in life years. And so for that reason, if we're going to do any kind of planned early inheritance, we want to make sure that we're protecting you financially so you don't give away too much so that you don't have anything left to live on. Second can be the family dynamics. So as we discussed earlier in the video, if we have 3 children and one of the children is not good with money and we give them an early inheritance, but the other 2 have to wait until after you're gone, that can actually cause some hard feelings amongst the siblings. Maybe you didn't know that your other son actually is in some financial dire straits as well and really could have used the money as much as their other sibling, but you thought they were doing okay. So you've now created a bit of a family dynamic problem where that other sibling doesn't get the early inheritance and becomes a little annoyed that that's what you've chosen to do. So think about your family dynamic when you're considering whether to do an early inheritance. And finally, there's the loss of control aspect. Because once again, like the first con we looked at, you no longer control the assets if you give them away. If you've given that inheritance to your children, if you've given it on to a grandchild, like let's say you've given the car to a grandchild, it's no longer your car. You don't control it. It's not yours anymore. And for some people, that loss of control can become a problem later in life because, again, they may need that asset back. They may have a reason why they need that car again when they get older. So hopefully you can see if we're looking at the issue of an early inheritance, there can be some reasons it's a good idea. There can be some reasons why it's a bad idea. But this should also tell you the importance of working with the professionals in your life. Work with your estate planning attorney, your accountant, your financial advisor. So before you do that early inheritance, you can go through these pros and cons and make sure you understand what you are doing and what the implications may be for you and your estate. If you have more questions or you'd like to set up a phone call, you can go to my website, 𝙃𝙀𝙍𝙀𝙀.com. There's a red legal strategy session button on the front page. If you click that, you'll be taken to my scheduling page where we can set up a strategy session to discuss your questions about your estate planning and any early inheritance you may be considering. So while it may sound like a good idea, you need to make sure you're understanding the pros and cons before you decide to give an early inheritance to your family members.